Over these past couple days, Nebraska fans on the internet have started a huge movement. They want both offensive line coach Donovan Raiola and defensive line coach Terry Bradden fired, effective immediately. So in today's video, I'm going to give you my honest thoughts. Should they go? Are they on the hot seat? What needs to happen with both of these units in order to improve? What does the future look like? And everything else you need to know. So really quick, sit down. This will be a very honest video. Trust me. Hit that like button if you're fired up. And also, if you're a diehard Nebraska fan and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? For daily content, talking your favorite team, talking Huskers, it's no brainer. Takes 2 seconds. Join this family. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, we have a lot to talk about. After Nebraska's offensive line and defensive line disaster versus the number 21 ranked Michigan Wolverines, Husker fans everywhere have called for the heads of both Donovan Raiola and Terry Bradden for both to be fired effective immediately. I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. Should it happen? Where do we go going forward? And how much longer are we willing to put up with this? I mean, let's start off with Donovan Raiola because he has the shorter leash. He's going into year 4 with Nebraska. He's been here since the final year of the Scott Frost regime. He was the only coach that Matt Rhule kept from that era. So you'd think that going into his 4th season, he'd have this figured out, that he'd rebuild Nebraska's offensive line to bring it to one of the best in this conference. And I will be very real with you. It is improved. It's a lot better than what it was in 2022. It's very formidable compared to that. But can we sit here and honestly say that Nebraska's offensive line stacks up against the best? Because that was the expectation. Let's hold Matt Rhule accountable. Matt Rhule said all offseason long that he believes our offensive line would be top 10. And I believe it's absolutely top 30, top 40. It's definitely in the top 50% of the Big Ten. But really, does it stack up against teams like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia? Absolutely not. So, I mean, should Donovan Raiola be fired? No. And we'll have a conversation about the other guy who I'll have some more strict thoughts on that. I think a lot of people are very emotional about our offensive line performance. I told you this right now. Our offensive line's good. I believe that. Why would we fire our offensive line coach for having a good offensive line? It's been good. It's statistically one of the best in the Big Ten within the first 3 weeks. I know it was a disaster versus Michigan. That was unacceptable. But you go back to Cincinnati with their defensive line, we controlled them. We neutralized Akron and Houston Christian. And yes, you like to see them show up in a big stage, in a big moment. They didn't. It is what it is. They're not a great offensive line. It's very clear. But they're good, especially from the interior play. So Donovan Raiola has proved to me that he's a decent developer. He's definitely a good recruiter. He's been arguably our best recruiter as a positional coach. You look at the class of 27, multiple 5-stars are interested in us because of Donovan Raiola. He did a great job in the class of 26. He did a great job in the class of 25. So to all the fans saying, oh, Donovan Raiola needs to be fired right now. The offensive line, they give 7 sacks versus Michigan. I understand your frustration. Don't get me wrong. It's embarrassing to have a great quarterback performance from what Dylan Raiola did and for him to have no time in the pocket and for the offensive line basically not give him a chance. It is disappointing. It is frustrating. That should not happen in big moments. But you need to chillax. What do you think is going to happen versus Michigan State? Our offensive line is going to bounce back because it has talent. It does. Now, we should absolutely make some changes inside that rotation, right? I don't believe Teddy Prohaska should start anymore. I think Gunnar Gatula is on a very hot seat in particular. He had a horrific performance versus the Wolverines. So we need some personnel changes, but calling for the offensive line coach's head after one game, after the first 3 games are actually pretty good, and after this unit has consistently improved over time, it's ridiculous to me. Ridiculous. But, and here's the last thing I'll tell you before we talk about Terry Bradden. I'll have some pretty deep thoughts about him. Donovan Raiola, for better or worse, will never be fired as long as Dylan Raiola is still in Nebraska Cornhusker. We could literally have the worst offensive line in the country, and Donovan Raiola would be on this coaching staff because if there's one family you don't want to piss off, it's the Raiola family. So, oh, you fire his uncle. What do you think is going to happen? Dylan's going to transfer. Dayton's going to decommit. I mean, we don't really care what Dayton does, right? He's not really going to contribute, but I mean, you can't fire him. So we're kind of in a tough situation either way, but should we fire him? Absolutely not. I think Donnie's done a decent job. Okay, if there's anything we need to be concerned about when it comes to Donnie, it's his interaction with the players, and that's a story for another day, right? Players love him or they hate him, right? I mean, we could talk about that later. But as from a developmental standpoint, I think he's been perfectly fine. But has he been great? No, but he's been fine. All right, let's talk about Terry Bradden. This is the big conversation we need to have. This is the big one because I have some thoughts about this. And I do somewhat agree with the mob. What are we doing here with Terry Bradden? I understand he's only been here for 1 year, 4 games. So people are going to sit there in the comment section and they're going to say, well, Wilson, you can't be so harsh on Terry Brain. He's barely been here. He can't change anything. When can we judge him then? Does it take 2 years to judge him, 3 years to judge him? Does it take 5 years? It is very clear to everybody who's following this defensive line that Terry Brain is not doing a very good job. It's very clear. Okay, recruiting. Let's talk recruiting. 0 defensive line commits in the class of 26. He missed Titan Davis. He missed Mikael Blade. He missed Hunter Higgins. He missed Valdon Sony. You go down the line. And I understand he's coming in from the NFL. I understand that. I understand. And he doesn't know how to recruit. You should have thought about that when you hired him, because recruiting is half your job as a positional coach. If you are a great developer as a wide receiver coach, for example, let's say you develop a lot of great players. That's cool. But if you can't recruit, you're a terrible coach, because that's literally half of your job. You can't just not execute on half of what you're supposed to do. Okay. So Terry Brain is a terrible recruiter, which is 50% of his job. He's still learning. Yeah, cool. But it's very clear that he's struggling badly. Let's talk about the D-line performance, because he inherited a lot of talent. Yeah, he lost Ty, he lost Nash, he lost a couple guys to the portal. But let's talk about some incumbent players who are supposed to improve. I mean, Cameron Lenhard, right? Like, this dude's been a black shirt since he was a true freshman. Has Cameron Lenhard ever got any better this season? No. Keona Davis, all the talent in the world. Has Keona Davis gotten better this season? No. Has Elijah Judy gotten better this season? No. Has anybody gotten better this season? Maybe besides Williams and Neri. Let's talk about specifically. Has the run stopping been good? Absolutely not. They have poor gap discipline. They have no athleticism off the line. They have no athleticism inside. It's clear they aren't coached very well. The pass rush, it's non-existent. It's statistically one of the worst in America. And the big issue is when Terry Braden got to Nebraska, he told every single defensive lineman to, and I quote, lose weight. At least the majority of them, right? Elijah Judy was very outspoken how he was supposed to lose weight this offseason. Ryan Pablo lost weight. So you'd think that because of all these defensive linemen losing weight, they'd be a lot more athletic off the line. No, they look slow, unathletic, and small. And when you have that 3 combination, you don't have a very good defensive line. So I understand, again, he's only been here 4 games, but you know pretty quickly with coaches whether they got it or they don't got it. When it comes to a head coach, when it comes to receiver coaches, offensive coordinators, you know pretty early on. We knew pretty early on Marcus Satterfield was a bad offensive coordinator. We knew pretty early on that Scott Frost was a poor head coach. We knew pretty early on. There's very few times where a positional coach will really struggle in the first couple of years and then really come on like in year 3 or year 4 and be like, oh, this is a great emergence. Like, that doesn't really happen. With Terrence Knight, for example, we knew pretty early on he was a great coach. It's clear to me that Terrence Knight's over his head a little bit. He's never been a positional coach before. Everybody sits here and talks about his experience with the Chiefs and, oh, he was a Super Bowl champion. He was part of that coaching staff. He was an assistant. He was like basically a grad assistant for that coaching staff. He was not the defensive line coach. He really did not play part in it, everybody being as good as what they were. That was because of their defensive coordinator and their true defensive line coach. Terry Braden played a very small role. He played a role, I'll give him credit, but not a big role. So he was an assistant. Going from an assistant, basically like a grad assistant, to an actual D-line coach, it's a huge jump. They thought that they could recreate Terrence Knight because the exact same thing. That's what T. Knight did. He went from being an assistant in the NFL and became a great D-line coach, but they failed. They got lucky with T. Knight. They tried to recreate their luck and it didn't work. So, I mean, let's compare him to Terrence Knight. Let's do it. Let's have that conversation. Because I was very adamant. When Tony White left, I loved Tony White, but I was cool with him leaving. But I was not okay with Terrence Knight leaving because he completely changed our defensive line. Our defensive line was terrible when he got here. And he revitalized the career of Nash Hentmaker. He revitalized the career of Jamari Butler, Ty Robinson, who was considered a bust before he got here. So in year 1 of Terrence Knight, he changed a lot. In year 1 of Terry Brain, what has he done? So we're going to compare those two. We're going to compare the year 1s of both Terrence Knight and Terry Brain. And it was clear early on Terrence Knight wasn't that guy. It's clear that Terry Brain isn't. So what do? We can't just get Terrence Knight back. That bridge is burnt. This should be a wake-up call to Matt Rule, John Butler, and Terry Braden himself. Okay. This is a big bye week for him. You got to fix this defensive line. You got to fix his issues, right? You got to scheme up these opponents a lot better, right? I'm not asking for this defensive line to be elite. That ship is sailed. I'm not even asking for it to be good. I'm just asking for it to be serviceable at this point. To be like 70th in the country, 60th in the country. Like, is that too much to ask? There are some group of 5 schools I believe have better defensive lines than us right now, which is crazy because we have a lot more talent than them. So that's what I'm asking for. I'm just asking for it to be serviceable. But I'm not asking for the second part. I'm begging you. I am pleading with you. And if you don't do the second part, you should be fired, Terry. You got to start recruiting. If you go into signing day and you have 0 defensive line commits in the class of 26, you have failed. You have failed. And people will go and they'll say, Wilson, maybe they're purposely not taking a defensive line commit. Maybe they want defensive linemen in the portal. That's not how it works. Newsflash, you have to take players in both the transfer portal and in high school recruiting. Okay, you can't just neglect high school recruiting in a certain position. It doesn't work like that. It'll cost you a lot of money. It's pricey, and it just doesn't work. Okay, in order to be a successful program, you got to recruit specifically in the trenches. So you got to start recruiting. If you can't have success, you can't flip guys in this D-line class, and you have nobody, you're not doing your job. So am I a believer that Terry Bradden should be fired? No. I'm not. Like, I'm going to give him still a lot of slack, right? Again, I understand it's only 4 games in, but man, if you can't figure it out sooner rather than later, at least by the end of this year, like, it might be a one and done type of situation. I would not be mad moving on from you. Really wouldn't be. Because it's to the point where it's one of the biggest downgrades I've seen in the past 10 years for Nebraska. The fact that we had a top 20 defensive line last year and you lose 3 pieces and it goes from top 20 to the worst in the Big Ten doesn't really point to the talent, in my opinion. Points to the coach. Figure it out. That's all I'm asking. All right, guys, that's my address to everybody calling for Donovan Raiola and Terry Bradden. Should they be fired? No. Terry Bradden specifically, maybe a little bit more on a hot seat, but again, he shouldn't be fired. But again, you got to figure it out right now, or else we're going to have some tough conversations maybe in November. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Hey, if you made this far, hit that like button and subscribe. As always, folks, go Met Roll, and I'll see you in the next one.